Hello friends, my name is Marinés, and it's been a little while since I read a book that really made me want to sit down with you guys and discuss it. I had 2 other videos planned to record today, but I couldn't get it out of my head that this was the video that I wanted to make and the book that I wanted to talk to you guys about. There are books that you read that directly after the first page, they leave you feeling one kind of way, but the more that you think about it, or the more that the book settles either in your heart or in your head, the more your feelings grow or change. It's only been 24 hours since I finished reading Son of a Trickster by Eden Robinson, but I cannot stop thinking about this book. And the more and more I do think about it, the more I really appreciate the very beautiful storytelling, the masterful contemporary world building, and the fleshed out and fully realized characters. When it comes to books I love, I generally have a sense of who I would recommend those books to. As book reviewers, we use the phrase not for everyone, which is like an obvious thing. Of course, every book is not going to be for everyone, but I think it speaks to this sort of idea that there are books that we feel have more mass appeal or more footholds for a variety of readers to sort of grab onto. Son of a Trickster feels to me like it isn't for everyone because it has a lot of different elements that feel like sticking points or that are polarizing to certain readers. It is a story told in a non-traditional structure. It is a story that decentralizes a lot of privilege. It is written by a Native woman, and it is about a Native boy and his family. It is character-driven and plot-light. It has elements of magical realism, and it also deals with a lot of heavy subjects, and has content warnings for substance abuse, alcohol abuse, domestic abuse, child abuse, animal abuse, a suicide attempt, self-harm, and there's even a scene where they have to put down the family pet. In Son of a Trickster, we follow the main character Jared. For the majority of this book, he is 16, but we do get flashes of his early life, and the story sometimes feels like it's being told in a non-linear way. It's kind of like flashbacks in a way that very much mimics memory, how you are navigating the main timeline of your life, but you get these like flashes of memories. Jared's parents are divorced, and in a lot of ways, he's taking more care of them than they are taking care of him. He is selling pot cookies in order to help his dad pay for his rent for himself and his new family, and he's constantly checking in with his mother and navigating the relationships with her new boyfriends. Jared is also abusing drugs and alcohol. He's making some not so great decisions. He's having to go through high school and deal with relationships with kids his own age, and weird things are also happening to Jared, such as ravens start talking to him and he's having weird dreams. If you hear the title and read the summary, I think that there is this inclination to expect a certain level of and type of magic, and this book bucks those expectations and parses out the magic very slowly. This was the House Salt Book Club pick for last month, and the live show is already out, so during that live show I talked about this use of magic and the way that I felt that it messed with the pacing of the book. There's definitely something to be said about the intent of the author versus the reading experience, but this is one of those elements that the more that I think about it, the more that it settles, the more that I appreciate it. It very much feels like the story is evolving on 2 fronts. First, Jared's life is sort of breaking down, and second, the magic is getting closer and closer to his life. And so even though the story doesn't have a very strong central plot, these 2 things unraveling are what are driving the story forward. Each piece of this informs the other, and Robinson is very deliberate in how she is kind of metering this out. My own reaction to this and how I'm sort of thinking about it more deeply now really makes me think about the way that we approach books that are from authors or describing experiences that are different than our own experiences, our own identities, or our own marginalizations. My baggage as I approached this book was all of the ways that I expected the magic to be. And again, I think it is valid to talk about pacing here, which I will do, but I also think it's valid to sort of consider the inclination to dismiss this magic. Son of a Trickster reminded me of Black Girl Unlimited by Echo Brown. There are a lot of points of similarity here, from the non-traditional storytelling structure to the exploration of themes of cycles of poverty and intergenerational trauma, and the way that the mom characters in both of these felt very similar. That said, I think the point of most comparison for me was the use of magic in both. When you're reading magical realism, I think there is a scale of how much of the story is contemporary and how much of it is magic, and what adding magic brings to the story or what elements of the story it ultimately carries. It felt to me like Son of a Trickster uses magic in a very similar way to Black Girl Unlimited. Magic is this ever-present figure in our characters' lives, an inherent and inherited magic that keeps appearing during tough spots for our characters. This is another book that I love, so if you have read and appreciated Black Girl Unlimited, I would recommend reading Son of a Trickster and vice versa. As a main character, I found Jared fascinating. I know that some people think that he is unlikable, and we do watch him stumble down this destructive path for a good majority of this book. But I think what Robinson does so well is give us this three-dimensional, messy human character. It felt like she created this boy who at his core is very kind and compassionate, and she said, okay, what if we take this kind, compassionate boy and set him at a disadvantage and then put him through the ringer? What would come out the other end? And what comes out is very messy, but Robinson does a really great job of maintaining that core of kindness and compassion. Even in his ignorance and in his bad decisions, the whole time I'm wanting him to do better, and more than that, I want everyone in his life to do better by him. In that way, Jared reminded me a lot of Todd Hewitt from The Knife of Never Letting Go and the Chaos Walking trilogy by Patrick Ness, right down to having a dog and dog feelings in both the books as well. Todd is a very difficult character for some people to root for because he's kept in the dark for most of his life, but also he's very slow to catch on, to accept new realities, and to course correct. He tries very hard, but he's just been raised in this atmosphere of toxic masculinity, and that is something that we see come up for him and come out of him very much throughout the book. And the middle portion of this book is just this repetitive cycle of this journey in which he's running away, people catch up to him, and he runs away again. Because the point is that throughout all of this, he's trying to reframe his sense of self and sense of reality. If you are somebody who felt more compassion for Todd than annoyance, then I think that you'll be able to get behind Jared, especially because I think that Jared overall is more likable than Todd is. The other characters in this book are equally complex and well crafted. I mentioned that I was rooting for Jared to do better, but that is kind of universally true in this book for all of the characters. I wanted better for them all, while also understanding that, like I've mentioned, this is a book that is exploring cycles of poverty and abuse and intergenerational trauma. So that even saying that I want him to do better is kind of oversimplifying a very complex thing. I think the best example of this is in Jared's mom. Robinson shows us so many different facets of this character. So there were times where she was just behaving badly and I was rooting for her. There were times where I could very much feel the sort of or the type of love and affection that did exist between Jared and his mom, and there were times where she was downright neglectful and she just completely left him on his own. And the moments where she is being loving and expressing that tenderness and affection don't take away from the moments of her being neglectful, and Robinson never shies away from those things. They don't cancel each other out, but are treated in a way that, like I said, paints a really full picture. In that regard, I was reminded of Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. In this book, a woman who is also on a sort of like destructive path gets roped in to babysit for her old college roommate's stepchildren who just happen to be able to spontaneously combust. The main character, Lillian, has no idea what it means to take care of kids, and she's also very stuck in her life because of some things that have happened to her and traumas. So she has to sort of navigate that alongside trying to figure out how to care for these children. It feels like this book is almost the other side of like a character like Jared's mom, where we are seeing the same sort of thing, the way that trauma in a person can affect how they care for others and how they act within family. And in Nothing to See Here, we see that explored through found family and through Lillian's story. I really appreciated the writing in Son of a Trickster. You guys know how much writing accounts for my enjoyment of a book, and I felt that this was really smartly and well written. The book itself, while full of heavy content, never feels heavy, or like the prose never feels bogged down. In fact, Robinson adds a lot of humor and wit and sarcasm through Jared as a character. I was particularly in love with the interlude chapters, especially at the beginning of the book, that are from almost from like the perspective of the magic, or that are explaining the magic to us way before the main character even know what's going on. We get these little tidbits, and they were so lovely and well written, and include like a bit of science in them in the way that it was trying to lay out this world for us. I mentioned earlier and in the live show that my main issue was pacing. Robinson sets up a cycle and uses repetition in her storytelling, especially throughout the middle of the book, to sort of show this like breakdown of Jared's life. It felt purposeful to me, like a purposeful representation of what substance and alcohol abuse looks like. Part of the reason that Jared is lost in terms of the magic of this world is because he has this scapegoat of, oh, I was just so drunk, that couldn't have been real. I feel like a little tightening up of that repetition, like maybe one less cycle, would have been perfect for me in my reading experience. But even that feedback is like, take it with a grain of salt, because in retrospect, I appreciate it a whole lot more. This is a series I would definitely continue reading. It is a book that I will almost certainly reread, and I think I will enjoy even more on reread. I would love to read everything that Eden Robinson has ever written, and this is getting adapted into a TV show in Canada, so I don't know if and when I'll be able to see this, but it is something that I'm very interested in watching. As someone who is a big rereader, and as someone who gets a lot of comfort in well-known and well-worn tropes in literature, I don't say this with any sort of like value judgment, but it isn't often that I read something that just feels really different, and Son of a Trickster did. It was clear-eyed, it was insightful, it was well written, it was challenging, and it was engaging. I hope that if any of this sounded interesting to you, that you would consider reading Son of a Trickster. Even if it ultimately doesn't end up working for you, it feels like a worthwhile book to try, especially if you are trying to incorporate more literature from Native authors into your reading. I'd love to chat with you guys down in the comments, not only about this book or any of the books that I mentioned in this video, but about a book that wouldn't let you go and that settled or changed in your feelings. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys soon.